Hi, folks. Steve Urban here. Today's episode of the Riderflex podcast is sponsored by Marketing 360. My good friend JB Kellogg and his team do such a fantastic job for us and so many other companies. Marketing 360 is the number one platform for small business, and it's everything you need to grow your business. If you need marketing support, I really encourage you to contact them at marketing360.com/riderflex, and we'll add that link to the description of this episode for easy reference. On today's episode of the Riderflex podcast, we have co-founder and CEO Igor Telyatnikov of Alpha Point, a financial technology company helping make e-liquid assets liquid. They enable customers to launch new products and services by providing institutions enterprise-grade blockchain solutions to digitize assets, launch markets, and reduce operational costs. So your dad was an engineer when he first came over, but he became an entrepreneur, and that's how you got the bug. Talk to us about that just a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my dad was an engineer along with my mom. They worked at the same company. He ended up leaving and starting a wholesale import business of Russian crafts, right? So he would import Bogorodsky toys, nesting dolls, kind of the stacking, hand painted dolls,
Ah,
um, Fabergé eggs, hand carved Santa Clauses, that's that sort of craft. And I got to see him do that. We actually spent my summers were really spent getting in a minivan with him with a car full of goods, and then driving around, Ohio or down south or up north, from Pennsylvania, and going on these like 2-3 week trips
wow.
to, find new accounts, visit old accounts. And it definitely laid the foundation. I saw everything he did, from negotiating with vendors, importing the goods, finding new customers, door to door, sometimes in cities, sometimes, with other tactics. I think the reason that I went and got a, marketing major, my brother got a finance major. My dad lacked two specific things in his business. He was very crafty. He was, very good at, making ends meet and making the business work. He wasn't well capitalized, right?
Okay.
So my brother went kind of the finance route, and he would sometimes put, $1,000 to $5,000, handcrafted Santas or nesting dolls on, $20 shelves, right? And there's the marketing aspect that was definitely
Yeah.
missing. So, I think in some small way, we kind of were looking at, okay, what skills was he missing? What did we not learn? How could we help,
Interesting.
with the family business in one way or another?
Interesting. Okay. Now, were you thinking when you went to school, hey, right after I graduate, I'm going to help my dad run that business? Was that the plan, or did you guys talk about that?
Yeah, I think it was always like the, an easy option and like
Okay.
backup
Okay.
plan.
Yeah.
And my dad ended up, my brother was older, right? So uh, when he left college, he actually partnered up with my dad, and they did,
Oh,
a couple different things, some things in real estate, but then more in online media, and they actually acquired websites. So they started buying up websites and
well,
basically, turning, website properties that had traffic into, revenue generating, properties. Similar to real estate, you get rent, online. If you have online real estate, you would get rent from the eyeballs and the advertisements, right? So, Vadim, my brother, ended up kind of building a company out of that, but I had exposure to, both the online media side and some of the things they did afterwards. But straight out of
wow.
school, I didn't end up, partnering up there. I went a different direction.
But lots of influences, though. So your dad definitely was an entrepreneur at heart. I mean, sounds like he was always looking for things to start and go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. He was definitely an entrepreneur at heart. He's told me stories back when they were in Russia, and an entrepreneurship was much more difficult, or borderline, not legal there at certain points in time. They did things with like my mom sews, right? So they would like sew, little pieces of clothing and things like that, and they had kind of these little side businesses or side hustles, that just, I mean, all above board stuff, obviously,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
just selling, little crafts that they would make themselves. So I
Very
think he
cool.
always had the bug, definitely got an education to do something more in mechanical engineering, but I think always was drawn back to, running and controlling, his own business.
Wow, lots of influences on you and your brother. By the way, did your brother go to Penn State too?
He did. Yes.
Wow, congratulations to your parents. They must be super proud, right? I mean, both you guys now are founders, business owners, both went through Penn State. Pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I think,
Yeah.
yeah, we like to think so that they're, they're proud of what we've done for sure. I
Okay,
think that was
so
that was part of the idea when they moved from Russia.
yeah,
I think
right.
it was about kind of the American dream, and we've been able to achieve that in many ways.
Good for them. Now, when I think about a guy like your dad that came from Russia, I think about a kind of a little more hardcore, a little more like kind of an intense, direct personality. Is that not accurate for him or no? There's,
I mean, it depends. Yeah, I think, yeah, definitely like direct, as far as like negotiating or business style, it's like, here's how it is. I mean, I think there's definitely more of a negotiation aspect. I find many times, you know, it took a while, I think, for my folks to understand that you don't go into Walmart and negotiate, the price, where like there's just like a different, like European and Eastern
it's so
European,
good.
there's more of a haggling culture sometimes, right?
Right,
As far
right,
as negotiation goes.
right.
So there's definitely more of that. But yeah, it can be very direct for sure.
Very interesting. Aventura, Florida, which is north of Miami, I think, right? If I got my bearings right. There's a huge Russian population, and I was doing a consulting assignment for a furniture retailer down there, and the heavy Russian population, and everybody that came in, yeah, it wasn't just look at the sticker price and buy it. They all wanted to negotiate every single thing.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's just a cultural thing.
Very cool.
You know?
Very cool. Well, okay. So lots of influences there. Thank you for sharing that personal stuff. So you get out of school. Walk us into your early career, and then how I think you eventually joined your brother at Lift DNA. But kind of walk us through some of that stuff, before Alpha Point, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so straight out of school, I got into like a sales leadership program, executive training at Ingersoll Rand Security
Okay.
Technologies. So,
Okay.
I moved down to Florida, actually, to Orlando, and
Okay.
did a rotational program there, basically working for different divisions of Ingersoll Rand. They have a manufacturing side where they make everything from, access control systems and, doors and locks and, things around that, physical security and safety devices. And then they have an integrated systems division, or did at that time. They've spun that out since, where basically they would go to schools and hospitals and military bases and help them secure their perimeter by installing, servicing, maintaining, the access control systems, the video surveillance systems, that sort of thing. So, I spent 5 years with Ingersoll Rand in multiple locations, both in Florida, and then I moved out west to California. At the time, Vadim had been, he had founded Lift DNA, which he was the CEO of. And that was, based on the experience that he had with my dad, acquiring websites and basically turning them into profitable, online real estate effectively, or online properties.
Mhm.
He took that skill set to a different company and then spun off and, made his own company, which really Lift DNA was designed to help large websites monetize better. So if they
Okay.
have, direct sales forces, anything that the direct sales force doesn't sell, they would automate and basically find the highest bidder for a particular impression for online media and display advertising.
I
Uh,
see.
so so while he was building that up and growing that, and he ended up, growing it to, a little over 50 people, I believe. They were doing, 1 billion ad impressions a month, that they were processing through the platform. So, real scale. He had tried, we had talked about him recruiting me at different points in
I'm sure.
time.
Yeah.
While I was at Ingersoll Rand out west, I actually started helping Vadim, at Lift DNA, really on kind of the sales side. I closed a couple accounts on the West Coast. And then Lift DNA ended up being acquired by OpenX, which is, large ad exchange, largest competitor to Google. So Lift DNA was acquired by them. They're based in LA as well. And then after that, I moved back east. I moved back for personal reasons, left Ingersoll Rand, and, to start a family, with my wife back, close to family. And Vadim basically, and I partnered up at that time. He had exited Lift DNA, and we started Svetlo, which is, an early stage, entrepreneurship kind of incubator and seed investor
Okay.
in the online media space. We did some things in digital payments, and eventually stumbled across, Bitcoin and the blockchain, which
I
led us
see.
to Alpha Point.
I see. Savetlo was funded by the money from the exit from Lift DNA, most
That's
likely.
right.
I get
That's
okay.
right. Yep.
Gotcha. And you guys did that for a while, and so you worked on Savetlo until you came across. Did you start? Walk us into Alpha Point, because I think did you
Yep.
start consulting for them, or were you an investor there? Walk us into that relationship. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So at Svetlo, we were looking for opportunities in media, and kind of, we were looking in other sectors as well. We had made some investments, but we weren't really investors. We were more operators, right? We like to be hands-on with the company, possibly
Mhm.
put some capital in, but really put in the sweat equity, and try to help the company grow, raise capital, and do everything around that. So
Yep.
the way we stumbled across first the way we stumbled across Alpha Point was we had another venture that was trading cryptocurrencies, right? So had kind of learned about cryptocurrencies kind of early in 2013. This is one of the first big price spikes had happened, and started trading and doing arbitrage trading strategies between exchanges. And
Okay.
what that did is that led us to go to, attended a couple conferences. We went to Inside Bitcoins in Las Vegas. We went to Inside Bitcoins in New York. And at that New York conference, we actually met Joe and Jack, the technical founders of Alpha Point. So really the experience was we were looking for relationships with exchanges at one point, and then we were looking to actually start a business because we learned about Bitcoin, we learned about the blockchain, we thought this was the future of value transfer and the future of money, and decided we didn't know how to jump in or what we were going to jump into, but we decided we needed to get involved full time. And we started talking to investors, some investors that had invested in Lyft, some investors that hadn't invested in Lyft, but really wanted to. We were talking to Josh Koppelman at First Round Capital, and a bunch of other firms as well, and really to understand how the VCs were thinking about the landscape, the landscape of what was going to happen in Bitcoin. There were infrastructure providers, there were wallet providers, there were exchanges, there were service providers, and based on that, we started to build a thesis of problems that existed in the space and how to fix some of those problems. And really stumbled across the Alpha Point on, we had a concept of creating a, Charles Schwab of Bitcoin, just a
Okay.
super simple way to buy and sell, which didn't really exist. And, providing some advanced portfolio management tools, things like that. And we evaluated actually Alpha Point as the backbone to power that venture. That we were going to invest in. We were going to have other VCs put money into as well. And what ended up happening is, we really liked the technology, we really liked the team, and we thought that, hey, there's an opportunity maybe here to partner up versus doing something from scratch. So both Vadim and I ended up joining full time, putting capital in, raising the first seed round. That was back in 2014, June of 2014, almost exactly a year after Alpha Point was founded.
But you're now, when you put the money in, you're co-founders now. So so there's really
Mhm.
four co-founders then. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right. So Joe and Jack were the technical founders. We had met them maybe 6 to 8 months after they had started, and
Yeah.
they had just kind of gotten their first
Okay.
customer. They were evaluating different business models.
All right. Yeah.
So we really kind of came in to help
Yep.
capitalize the business, really create it into what it's become.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Okay. And nobody was doing this. There wasn't a platform that somebody could use there wasn't an E-Trade for cryptocurrency back then.
No, there wasn't an E-Trade. I think, Coinbase was just kind of, starting at that point as well, right? We've been in the space now for 7 years. There, there were some, exchange kind of focused businesses out there. Mount Gox, was
Okay.
kind of the primary exchange where the majority of the volume was going through. There were some, you know, um, firms that were kind of up and coming, and Bitfinex was growing exponentially there. Bitstamp was around. What there wasn't at the time was, a white label technology provider to, help folks around the world that wanted to start an
A
exchange
broker.
in Brazil or Canada or somewhere in Europe, the technology backbone to do that, right? And that's really
Gotcha.
the technology that Alpha Point created, and that's still our primary business today, is powering marketplaces around the world to enable traders or retail or institutional buyers to just buy and sell cryptocurrencies or security tokens or other digital assets that are on top of blockchains.
So in layman's terms, can I ask it this way? If I had a buddy and we wanted to start our own E-Trade company, we had the marketing and the, I don't know, the brand idea to start an E-Trade that was just for cryptocurrency, but we didn't have the software or the developers or any of the, like you said, the infrastructure to do it, we would call Alpha Point. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. So Alpha Point does, the technology, we can do the hosting, technical support, and then our customers do, they have the regulatory, piece in their local jurisdiction, the banking relationship, and they do all the marketing and kind of first level customer service.
Hmm.
Right. So we're really a software provider. We build technology, we can host it, or we can, put deployed on-prem with customers. But we're strictly on that side of it, and we have customers that have no technical expertise, right? They have no developers on staff, and then we have customers that have 100 developers on staff. So it's really dependent on what the use case is and what the vision is.
So how big is the company today? I don't know how much you want to, give us here on this podcast, but I know that, and I saw the news where you got, I don't know, $5 or $6 million this year, I think, from an investor. That's public knowledge, I think, right? And
Yep.
just talk to us about the size of the business and where you're at with funding. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So we, really the first capital in, outside of very small kind of notes, was a million and a half back in 2014 when Vadim and I joined. We just, with this last 5.6 million that we raised and announced this year, we were up to almost $24 million in capital, injections into the company. So,
Wow.
we've
Wow.
had a long history, and we've kind of seen the ups and downs of the crypto market, and have invested heavily to build the technology that we have. I can say, as far as size, I can say we have dozens of customers. We've had over 100 customers, to date, at the company. We have active customers in over 20 countries around the world.
Great.
Some regions, the majority of Bitcoin trading is done on our platform. And, revenues, I can say, are north of 10 million, on an
Nice.
annual basis.
Nice,
So
nice, nice, nice. All right. Are you cash flow positive yet, or are you still in the scale up phase? Can you touch on
yeah,
that
I
or
mean,
no?
yeah, that's always a decision. When you raise capital, you're typically not cash flow positive,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
are now, operating,
Oh,
especially with what's going on. We've structured the company to operate profitably,
very
if
good.
we need to.
Very good. Good for you guys. Wow. Who's better at asking people to write a check, you or your brother?
My brother,
Is he?
yeah.
Is he?
Well, he's the finance guy, right?
Oh,
So,
okay. Oh, gotcha.
yeah, I mean, I think, he's very good at kind of the structuring and that piece. And he's still involved. He's on the board. He's the chairman of Alpha Point. And
I
then,
see.
and then I run the day to day as CEO.
So let me guess. He can structure the deal, but what if you're trying to talk this investor into writing a $5 million check, and he just, it just takes some people skills. You got to take him out for a few drinks and just kind of make sure he likes you. That's probably more you than your brother, though, right? I'm just guessing.
I, yeah, I think it's both, right? I think, yeah, look, ultimately the relationship with investor, it's definitely a relationship. You need
You
to have
got
a
that right.
relationship and a
Amen.
foundation of trust, right?
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
that's always important, and yeah, so I think, in working with, there's definitely investors that I've brought on board that, I've led the deals at various stages, and, it depends on the time and the prospect.
Can you talk about who's in control? Like who's got the majority control of cap table, or we can't go into that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, it's still a founder,
Cool.
majority owned,
Very good.
company, between, Joe Ventura, the CIO, Jack Sallin, who runs support now, myself and Vadim,
Wow.
it's still founder majority owned and controlled.
Okay, so I just want to summarize for you because I think this is a big congratulations moment. So you're telling me that this thing is what, 6 years old, or how many years old?
So we'll turn 7 in June.
Yeah,
So 6.5. Yeah.
6.5, 7 years old. You've raised a total of like 24, $25 million, but the founders are still in control and you're now cash flow positive. Boom. Congratulations.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
I mean, not everybody can say that. I know you're cruising past that like it was, like it's, oh yeah, we're here. But I mean, that's a huge accomplishment, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, appreciate it. And
Uh,
look, we have great investors, we have great partners. Galaxy Digital invested $15 million in 2018.
awesome.
So they're certainly on the board as well. And we just added an independent director, Tim Sheevy from Janney. He's the CEO of Janney, which is a $1 billion plus broker dealer in the space.
Congratulations, man. Really awesome. Now, are there ever those times when the chairman, who happens to be your brother, in case the listeners weren't paying attention, are there ever those times where you and him just want to be like, listen, bro, take a hike? Like, you're getting on my nerves. So we just, any fun stuff you want to share where you and him just kind of go at it a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're brothers, right? So there's there's definitely going to be friction from time to time, but yeah, look, we've always been close, so we have a good relationship and a good working relationship. But yeah, of course, you get
Yeah. Yeah.
um, into all kinds of situations and disputes from time to time.
Now, when you meet for Thanksgiving, is it business or you guys try to stay away from it?
It's
Holiday.
it's funny. So I think that we get this from our father as well. But there's almost no like we have a lot of non-business conversations, and we talk all the time about other things. But I rarely is there a conversation where business is not touched on at all, right?
Ah,
And I remember, we'd go on vacations when we were young, and my dad would, it'd always be business. We'd be on the Jersey Shore, wherever, and my dad would be going into, a store trying to sell them nesting dolls. Like it was just, it was just part of, it was always on the back of the mind, and so that I think we've inherited that.
is your dad involved at all? Was he an investor or is he retired? What's his deal?
He's mostly retired. I know he invested, I think, and left. He's not involved directly in Alpha Point now.
Well, but he's got to be super happy with you guys. Let me ask you some entrepreneurial kind of moments here for the listeners, because a large part of our audience, they're either startup founders, aspiring entrepreneurs. So talk to me. What are a couple of big time scary moments that you woke up in a panic, uh, or you woke up in a sweat in the middle of the night, and you're like, oh shit, I don't know if this is going to work out. Anything you want to share with us? Couple of big time scary moments throughout some of this yet?
Yeah, I mean, look, as an entrepreneur, you sometimes are running a company with months of of runway, right? So it's kind of an always, you wake up in the middle of the night thinking about, when's the next customer going to come, or so we've had a long history at the company, right? So there are plenty of times that you really need to close that investor, you really need to close that sale, and you've got to put it in above and beyond to make sure that happens, and it doesn't get away from you, right? So I think that's always something that kind of keeps you up at night if that's happening. Luckily, we're not in that situation today. But in terms of the some moments like that early on, with whenever you're dealing with cryptocurrency, right, there's the opportunity and the possibility of sending Bitcoin into the void. You can, there's no bank, there's no middleman, there's nobody to go complain to if you didn't receive a transfer, you sent the transfer to the wrong address, right?
Ooh,
So
ooh, ooh.
so there's sometimes, almost anytime there's like a large transfer, back in the day before you had more sophisticated clearing and settlement systems, you would send it, and you would just kind of cross your fingers and want to make sure that $100,000 reached its destination. and you gave the right address or you sent it to the right address, when you're dealing with large sums. And there's, anybody that's getting involved in Bitcoin, if you're creating a key, make sure you back it up, make sure you store it in multiple places, because there's been so many stories of people that, had Bitcoin, when it was $20, then it went up to 10,000, and they can't find, that 25 Bitcoin they got, back in the day.
What?
That sort of thing still happens today, right? So
Oh, yeah. You just
many
remind
millions of
you.
dollars sitting on hard drives.
Wow. Wow. You just reminded me of something that I think I wasn't, it didn't really hit me till just now. It's scary to be an entrepreneur. It's super stressful to be a CEO. But when you tie that all into an industry that is still, I don't know, would you say it's still an infant stage? Maybe not infant stage, but when you tie that all to an industry that's still, what's the word I want to use? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's early. It's
Yeah,
still in the
early.
early stages, and things haven't been worked out. It's like highly technical, right? So, and there's different risk factors at play. Yeah, it definitely creates another level, an element.
Mm.
And we've had in our past, we've had times when there were security incidents that affected customers, and luckily we have insurance and we can make our customers whole, and that's what we've done. And since then we haven't had issues. But if that, in the midst of that type of situation, very, very stressful, to make sure that everything's okay, and everybody's going to be all right. So yeah, definitely lots of ups and downs in the space.
Can I ask you this? Is this a relatable example? Back when people were trading gold and they started handing out paper certificates that backed a certain amount of gold somewhere, like physically. Um, and people said, "Hey, we can't carry around these bags of gold. We got to have paper. We got to have a better way to do this." Um, is that kind of what you're going through? I mean, a little bit. You're kind of like saying, "Hey, this old cash system, coin system, dollar bill system, like this doesn't work. We're gonna switch to this other thing." Is it kind of relatable like that? I don't know.
Yeah, it is. And you had bearer bonds, and like the piece of paper, owned the underlying asset, and if you lost
Yeah,
that piece of paper, sometimes that's an issue.
yeah.
So for Bitcoin, the easiest way to explain it is there's a problem with payments online. From a merchant's perspective, when you get paid with a credit card, sometimes the transactions are reversed because of credit card fraud. Somebody stole your credit
Yeah,
card,
yeah,
they go
yeah.
and they buy something online with that.
Yep.
Then you see the transaction, you say, I never bought that. That's not my address it was shipped to. And you
Mhm,
reverse the transaction. In
mhm.
that situation, it's the merchant that loses, right? Because they don't, they get the funds clawed back. They just shipped, whatever the good was, and it's done. And that's why companies like overstock.com and others, they don't ship to Nigeria, for instance, because the credit card fraud is so high, they
Wow.
won't ship to that market, right? So what Bitcoin did is it made transactions unreversible, because there's no bank, there's no credit card company to go
I
to
see.
complain that,
I
hey, I
see.
never received it. So it's sometimes a little bit more risk for the individual, right? Because they can't kind of claim it back. But from a merchant perspective, Overstock can now ship to regions of the world that they never shipped to before, as an
Wow.
example. And that's
Well,
why
wow.
some firms like that were early adopters. So the problem that Bitcoin really solved was, like, if you take a picture, you take a picture of your wife, you send it, who owns that picture? That picture can be copied, and
Mhm.
replicated, thousands, hundreds of thousands of times with no real control. What Bitcoin did was it made a system that makes it impossible to replicate, the Bitcoin you hold. It's yours, right? And there's a finite supply. There's only so much of it, and I can send it to you by having something called a private key. I can send it to you by unlocking those funds out of my wallet and sending it to you. Nobody else without that private key can take those funds. And that's the system that since 2009 has really proven and prevented that double spend problem. I can't clone my Bitcoin and send it to multiple places. And now that's been applied to, hundreds of other blockchains, and it's now being applied to other assets as well.
Wow. Sounds like there's lots of benefits. And by the way, being a former executive of consumer good companies, yeah, chargebacks from consumers are a pain in the ass. I'm trying to remember what the average chargeback percentage for transactions is. I don't know, 1 or 2% or something like
Yep.
that. For an average retailer or an average wholesaler. Damn, if I could grab that 2% back as a big time retailer, why don't they all just move to this and get away from credit cards?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of firms now that accept, Bitcoin for payment or other digital currencies. It's basically digital cash, right? It's the same as like you go into a store with some cash. It's the digital equivalent of cash,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it really unique and it really does make it popular with merchants. It's more about, how widespread is it. I don't think every single person in the world is going to use it until you have central banks start to
I
issue
see.
their own digital currencies, which has been happening. The stimulus bill that just happened, that was passed, an earlier version of it had a central bank issued digital currency, component to it. That
Really?
I don't think passed, but you can see central banks, and governments around the world are thinking about this because it does remove friction. It removes certain problems from the financial system.
Will the entire globe just be trading Bitcoins and move away from all these different countries that have different, dollars and things like that? Is that where it's going?
That's definitely not a crystal ball I have access to. I think more and more you will have central banks, you will have, monetary policy. I think that assets in general, whether it's a dollar, you will move into a digital form more and more,
Okay.
right? And you will have central banks issue their own, and it'll be widespread. I think Bitcoin has its own use cases for regions like Argentina that have hyperinflation. It's heavily used, right? It's heavily used because it is safer and less risky to hold a Bitcoin than it is to
Right.
hold, the local currency,
Right. Right.
because
Right.
so value can be, through hyperinflation, your life savings could be wiped out. This can prevent that.
I
But
mean,
you also have
yeah.
something called stable coins that are pegged to a dollar or pegged to other currencies that offer similar benefits, to have kind of that lower volatility than local national currencies.
Here's something that I may be speaking out of turn on because I definitely don't know the industry. But you said moving towards digital. I mean, we're already kind of there, right? Like, there's not really printed dollars for all these funds that banks say they have, right? I mean, that cash
Yep.
isn't actually that physical dollar bill for every fund amount for every bank across the globe isn't actually sitting there, is it?
No, absolutely not. Right? It's not sitting there, and and yeah, by digital, I think there's kind of everything's digital, for the
Right,
most part
right.
already, right? The
Yep.
majority of financial transactions, by volume are done digitally. It's
Right.
more about using a similar mechanism like Bitcoin, the underlying blockchain that stores. It's the public ledger of who owns what balances. I
Hmm.
think that's the piece that is going to be used more and more
Gotcha.
across asset classes,
Gotcha. Very good.
because yeah,
Yep.
because you have certain things like an easy example. When you buy a home, you have to buy something called title insurance, right? And you
Right.
buy title insurance because it's not 100% clear that the person who owned the home prior to you actually owned the home, right? And title insurance protects against claims later that somebody else
Yeah.
had a deed, a paper deed, and this and that. You can apply, if you apply blockchain, on a national scale, and some countries like Estonia are doing this, to title, you eliminate the need for title insurance, and
Mm.
you kind of kill that industry for that particular service. But it's just friction, it's just cost, right? And I
Hmm.
think ultimately technology and what's happening with technology is it really strives to eliminate that friction and cost, and ultimately will win, right? Just because
Hmm.
it's a
Hmm.
more efficient, more effective way to do things. And it eliminates other problems, like you have a government takeover in certain parts of the world and they erase the history of the title, right, and redistribute
Right.
wealth
Right.
in that type of way. So it can kind of future proof democracies in some way,
Wow. Wow.
as well.
Hadn't thought of that. Okay, very good. Boy, fascinating topic. I know we're already getting close to the end of the time here. I want to ask you just a couple more questions. Don't want to, keep you past your hour. Fascinating story and awesome information. Thank you for sharing it.
No problem.
If you had to give some last minute advice to aspiring entrepreneurs, a couple of brothers out there thinking about starting a business together, what would you tell them?
Yeah, look, find what you're passionate about. I think a good signal that you're onto something is that you're just obsessively reading about it. You're digging in. I think it's the way I look at, also hiring people. I'd rather hire somebody that is extremely passionate about a subject
Mm.
versus somebody that has tons of experience. And if you have same level of experience and one person's passion and one person's not, you just know that person's going to read in their spare time, learn about the topic, and become the expert. And as an entrepreneur, if you want to win, you have to be the expert and you have to be the best in whatever you're trying to be and trying to do. And if you don't have that passion behind it, that's it's going to be much harder or possibly impossible to win compared to somebody that's going to be there and going to be hungrier.
Totally agree. If you had to call that 21-year-old kid coming out of Penn State and give him some advice, knowing what you know now, what would you tell him?
Yeah, look, again, I think if you're interviewing at a company, right? If you're looking for a job that in a particular industry, do your research, do your homework, and try it. One of the questions I ask for anybody that interviews at Alpha Point: do you own cryptocurrency? Do you own Bitcoin? Our business is powering exchanges around the world, right? And just the fact of you owning a little bit, even if you don't know a lot, right? If
Mhm.
you don't have to earn a lot, just the fact that you've tried, says something that you spent the time, kind of did your homework. I think that's huge. And yeah, look, coming out of Penn State, sky's the limit. And yeah, we've got a few Nittany Lions here, and
Did you go to the
yeah,
football games, by the way? Did
yeah, I mean, probably not this year, right? But
but you
we'll see what happens.
when you were in school though, you got to go as a student.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I fully painted up and did
Sweet.
the whole thing. So yeah, no, yeah. Penn State football is yeah, to be reckoned with.
Oh, that's pretty cool. If last question here, if you had to put your core purpose in life into a sentence, and I encouraged you to push that beyond your wife and two kids, who I'm assuming is the automatic primary core purpose. But if we kind of looked past that, how would you define your core purpose in life today?
Yeah, I think it's sometimes when you're like in a business and you're kind of in it so deep and so hard, those lines can kind of blur. Like, what's my
Right.
personal purpose and kind of the company's purpose?
Yep.
I think that I've always, striven to, make sure to contribute back, like, pay it forward in the community. I think, um, you know, I really see my purpose as finding ways to leverage technology to make a more equitable world, a safer, cleaner world.
Mm,
And
that's good.
my passions have always kind of lied around that, whether it's kind of solar energy and ways that can kind of help improve, or like open financial networks, which is the space I'm in now. It has the opportunity and ability to create a more equitable world, that's
Very,
more fair, for
mhm.
participation of those involved.
Very good, Igor. And by the way, you are giving back, and a perfect example of that is doing this podcast today and sharing your story and giving lots of good advice for the listeners, which I appreciate you doing. Thanks so much for being on the Riderflex podcast.
Thank you,
Uh,
Steve.
I'm going to hit stop on the recording, but hang on just a second before you hang up. Okay, sir? Thank you so
Sure.
much.
Yeah, no problem.
The Riderflex podcast features entrepreneurs, business executives, and the stories behind how they got there, as well as daily tips on career advice and job interviews. Our show can be heard just about anywhere these days, but you can visit riderflex.com and click on the podcast page to hear all the previous episodes and learn more about the recruiting and consulting services we provide. Contact us at the email address info@riderflex.com or 888-964-5876. Thanks so much for listening, and if you enjoy our show, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like the episodes.